Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Pickles Playbook. I am your host, Sergeant Pickles, and with me, President of the West Coast Mountaineer Mafia, Mr. Daniel Gygax. How we doing, my friend?
Doing great.
So today, what brings us to the inaugural Pickles Playbook is everyone in the group chat of the College Football Mafia knows I'm a huge nerd with my numbers, and I absolutely dive into scheduling. And much consternation was had that the Big 12 is not doing their fans justice when it comes to scheduling, and I have the numbers to back it up. This is your actual 2024 through 2027 schedules. So this is 4 years. If you see it, that means you're playing that every year. Those are your annual rivals. If you got a 3, that means you're playing them the majority of the time. They're kind of your preferred matchups, etc. And they wanted to make sure that in a 4-year stretch, you're playing home and away, so you'll play every team at least twice. Utah, Colorado, they're only playing 3 out of 4, and I get it. As Wild Ute will tell you in the Pac-12, that wasn't like a premier rivalry. If you look at the history of Utah, Colorado, they've had 70 total meetings, and they played every year from 1903 to 1962. So there's history there. They played every single year from 2011 to the present, and I don't know why, with the position that the Big 12 is in, that they wouldn't lean into emphasizing more of those rivalries from teams coming in. What do you think, Daniel?
I think a lot of that is, they are regionally close, and you're missing a lot of them that were regionally close that, like BYU, Colorado, Utah, Colorado. Yep. You're talking teams. Yes, I know we're talking a couple hundred miles between Boulder and Provo and Salt Lake. But if you look at outside of BYU, Utah, where's the next closest team? That would be in Boulder.
Yeah, BYU, Colorado. I have it here. They're 338 miles as the crow flies. And in a cross-country conference, that's relatively close. Yeah, that was another one I put on there. BYU, Colorado. Why are you only playing each other twice? Make travel easy for fans. It's cool seeing away fans in stadiums, especially when they're in, major metros like Boulder's close to Denver and BYU's close to Salt Lake. Like, you can have away games scheduled, and it makes for a better atmosphere and I think a better TV product. Both with Utah and BYU, those are Mountain Time Zone. That's a huge thing too. Yes. You're trying to fill those TV slots. You're not, having fans on the East Coast staying up till 9 p.m. So to me, that was a huge miss. Colorado, Kansas State. I didn't know this one until I looked into it. They're about 460 miles apart. They played every single year from 1948 to 2010. They were in the Big 8 and Big 12 together. They played 67 times. So I get it. It may not be as, historic as some of the other rivalries, but I think that's one you should have played more often. I don't know why they didn't. The next one down, this is inexcusable. This was the biggest red flag when these schedules first came out. K-State, Iowa State, Farmageddon, they have played 108 times. They are 220 miles apart. They're one of 2 uninterrupted college football rivalries that has never been stopped for any reason. And that streak is set to end in the 2027 season. Daniel, do you think is this probably the biggest blunder of them all on my list?
It's a really big whiff. And I get having Farmageddon in Ireland. You need a game that's going to end up getting the eyeballs and stuff like that. But not having it in Ames or Manhattan, I wouldn't say a miss, but let's say a foul back to the press box.
Well, and like you said, if it's such a big draw that you're making it your premier product, you're going to play in Ireland. Why are you not playing it every single year? Like, I don't know what you need to do, Big 12, Brett Yormark. Fix it. 2027, move teams around, do whatever. Play Farmageddon, because that's one that the casual fan outside of the Big 12 will say, oh, that's a good matchup. Regardless of how the teams are doing, I'll tune in for that. Those are the kind of games the Big 12 really needs to sell. That's what you have to build on. Texas Tech, TCU, the battle for the saddle. Talking to some TCU fans, this might not be their number 1 or number 2 rivalry, but it is a rivalry. They were both in the Southwest Conference. It's been played 67 times. And like you said, for travel, they're 260 miles apart. That's a road trip. And Tech fans, we know, live in Dallas.
Yes. And also on top of that is that, yes, TCU, their number 1 rival is SMU. That's a non-con. And then number 2, they list Baylor.
Right.
And Baylor, I don't know how far Waco is from Fort
It's like
Worth.
100 something miles.
Yeah,
It's
but
really close.
yeah, you're just taking a drive down I-35. So we're not talking driving to the ends of the earth.
Right.
That one, I could almost forgive it because the way that the schedule is set up, they're trying to get a lot of these we've never played these guys before games to happen.
Right, but if you look at the schedule, Tech is down. Go down their column playing
Yeah.
ASU. That one I get. That was an old border conference
Yes.
team from the '60s. But then you're playing West Virginia. Which, no offense to West Virginia, you've been Big 12 friends forever, but that's about as far away as you could get. I don't see why they traded for the teams they did.
The one that you have next is the one that a lot of fans are, and
yeah.
What was it? It was they've played every year since 1954.
Yes, Baylor, Texas Tech, the infamous Butt Bowl.
Yes,
83 meetings. They're only 300 miles apart. They were in the big Southwest Conference, the old Big 12. They have always been in the conference, and they have always played. And again, you're selling yourself short. You have baked in really good rivalries in the conference. I think you can get back to some of those without really trading anything at all.
It's more hate on the Baylor side for Texas Tech than Texas Tech for Baylor.
That could still swing one way or the other, depending on who wins. And the more you play it, the higher the chance it turns into a two-way, really heated rival.
Exactly.
Next on down the list is near and dear to your heart, the Big East showdown, West Virginia's Cincinnati. You've only played 22 times. I was kind of surprised by that, despite being in conference.
I'm not. A lot of it is that West Virginia was one of the Eastern Independents for who knows how
forever,
years.
Right?
Yeah, forever. Cincinnati, a lot of it had to do with Cincinnati was not, I wouldn't say big player, but Cincinnati would end up on WVU's schedule as like a G5. Occasionally, Cincinnati would play there at WVU. Until Cincinnati joined the Big East, very rarely did WVU go to Cincinnati to play at Cincinnati. And yes, it would be the closest rival that WVU now has in the conference. Yes, there is some history, but whenever you talk about West Virginia history, you talk about Pitt, you talk about UPI, you talk about Syracuse, you talk about Maryland, you talk about all those other schools that they played close to 100 times.
My thing in the Big 12, and I say this with respect, it's a collection of parts from a lot of random places, in a sense, just because the college football world we live in. And if you have any history whatsoever, I feel like that's worth leaning to. And even more so when you're 250 miles apart and away games are totally possible. That, like, West Virginia forever, this more than anyone, was just on an island out there having to make these long road trips. And to me, this is also a reward for West Virginia to say, hey, you have a game every year that you could go an away trip to if you wanted.
If you look at geography of West Virginia, if you look at the western half of it, you are closer to Cincinnati than what you are the drive up to Morgantown. So from the Huntington, that area, it's about 150-ish miles to Cincinnati. From that area up to Morgantown, you're looking 225.
When West Virginia is having to do multiple states cross country just to go to every away game in the old Big 12 because they're all in Texas and the Midwest, I think you lean into whatever history they have, as limited as it is. You can make something out of that. You're close enough in proximity.
The closest rival before Cincinnati was brought in was Iowa State, and that's still about close to a 900-mile trip.
Giving West Virginia a little travel relief is overdue after a decade plus. The last one, I think the fans have met some resistance from this. I've seen from the Houston fans because they kind of associate more with the Texas teams, obviously. Houston, UCF, they're like, oh, it's kind of iffy, whatever, I don't care. But you played each other every year. You were in the AAC. You're 857 miles apart. And I say that because UCF is the new West Virginia. They're on an island. They need all the help they can get. And why not give them a rival that's close by their standards that you were in a conference with before, you have history with, lean into that. And I just love the space race gimmick. UCF already does it with their uniform, so just lean into it all the way.
But you're right. UCF is probably, it is now the most geographically remote school that you have in the Big 12. Morgantown and Cincinnati, we're still talking 500-600 miles. But UCF is still saying, you want to know something that beats being in the AAC.
You got to give them a little bit of help. And, when I see things like you go across UCF's column, you see they got extra games against BYU and Colorado. Like, I don't know what we're doing here, really. So this is what I came up with. And as you can tell, I'm a heavy fan of fixed rivalries and really building that hate over time. I added back in the majority of the misses that I think were on the Big 12 schedule, including, Utah, Colorado. Farmageddon, rejoice, people. Farmageddon is back. I gave Texas Tech a little bit of love. I know you said maybe the TCU isn't the team they care about as much. The Butt Bowl is back, and the way the schedule worked out, I even got Baylor, Houston as a regular rival. They're fairly close together by Texas terms. So I think that'd be cool to kind of get as much Texas football playing together like the old Southwest Conference as possible. And then you see that giant block of fixed opponents down in the corner. This heavily concerns West Virginia. That a lot has to do with UCF and travel distance, obviously. But I think it does make sense because you're staying in that Eastern time zone playing Cincinnati and West Virginia. You have a rival that you've had before in Houston. What's your take on this just at a quick glance, and then perhaps as a West Virginia fan in specific?
I like it. I'll take it because you got to remember those East Coast, that noon spot. Somebody's got to play it. And we're talking 11 Central Time. And you would feel that quite often, especially whenever WVU was the only Eastern Time Zone team. All the schedules out of the Big 12 for decades showed everything Central Time because that's where the majority of everything was located at. And the Big 12 offices are located outside of Dallas. So playing WVU Cincinnati, WVU UCF, Cincinnati UCF, play it up because you're going to have to fill that schedule and might as well fill it up with teams that are, yes, I know UCF we're talking hundreds of miles.
Yeah, Cincinnati to West Virginia and UCF is about 750 as the crow flies. I did a full table of distance so I could calculate it out, and 750 by Big 12 standards is pretty darn close, especially when it concerns UCF.
Exactly.
And, you're in the same time zone, as you said. It's almost as much about filling time slots staggered correctly as it is geography in the raw sense. So I think having those blocks of Eastern games that are going to be reliable and you can plug them in where you need for that early slot, I think it really it sets you up nicely. And you're still playing all these other teams. You're still playing everyone a minimum twice in 4 years. So it's not like you're never going to see these other teams. But I think a little more, being clever in order to get some of those rivalries cooked in, like Farmageddon, like, Baylor, Texas Tech. It really didn't take me that long to come up with something that I personally felt was better. But we'll go ahead and I'll just throw up the side-by-side. So if anyone can take a glance at it and see where I took games away, where I added games. But down there at the bottom, this is the key component for me is I added all these rivalries back, and your average road game distance, it went down. Your median road game distance, so you're just your middle of the road team, that went down also by about 70 miles. UCF, who needs more help than anyone, their travel shrunk quite a bit. So I'm just going to say it. Not to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but I gave you more rivalries with less travel. I don't really see the downside here, people. My last one I'll throw up. This is just a giant cheat sheet. Go find your team, see what rivals I gave you every year. And then you'll see the box below that is you're going to play those teams 3 times in 4 years. My potential misses, ones that I know I might see in the comments straight away. Colorado doesn't really have a ton of games. They're playing Kansas State, but they're not going to play Kansas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, those old Big 12, Big 8 teams that they had on their schedules forever. But because of, mountain time zone scheduling, Arizona kind of needs those games more.
I want to say Colorado had 2 games last year that started at a 10 a.m. kickoff Mountain Time.
Yep. They plugged them in early because they want them in those, big time, middle of the day, big eyeball slots.
Yep.
That is kind of a factor of Dion, but it still gives you flexibility. You could plug them into a midday slot or a late night slot if you need it, and they're playing, the Arizonas and the Utahs, etc. Texas Tech versus ASU Arizona. I would love the idea of them playing more and kind of getting back to that old border conference from the 60s. But Texas Tech, the trade-off was that you're playing TCU and Baylor every year. And if you ask Tech fans, maybe they can correct me in comments, but I think they'd take that trade. They want to play the Butt Bowl. They want to play, in Fort Worth. So sorry to Arizona and Arizona State, but that's also why you see Oklahoma State. They're the only team without a fixed rival because of just the quirk of the scheduling. However, they're playing the Arizonas, the Kansas schools, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. You're playing them 3 out of 4 years. And mathematically, weirdly, in the new Big 12, Oklahoma State is the most centrally located school. They have the shortest average distance to every other school. So no fixed rivals, kind of a bummer for Okie State fans. Maybe you could throw it down in the comments of who you think I should put as a fixed rival.
Texas Tech.
But I can't give Texas Tech everyone as a rival.
I know.
Only certain teams got 3 rivals, and that's pretty much maxing it out. When you look there and you see Baylor, that's about as maxed out as it could go. And that one was just a quirk of how I had to balance the game. All in summary, what do you think, Daniel? And any hits or misses that you think I could amend, or do you think I got it spot on?
One thing that the Big 12, I wouldn't say lean into, but should have on there is the old Pac-12 teams and BYU. That would be 5 of them, have them play a lot more. And I understand because you want to have all these teams play the other end of the conference. All the Texas teams and Oklahoma State, that would be 5 of them, have them play each other a lot more because that's part of the old Southwest Conference. That's part of the old Big 8. Losing Farmageddon is just idiotic.
It was foolish because I think you could have traded it out easily for a different team.
Exactly. But this is the way the schedule goes. All the athletic directors had input on the schedule, and whenever it comes down to it, they want to highlight all these members that you have. You got 16 schools in. They want everybody to play twice. Guess what? Something's going to have to be dropped off the side.
Yeah, everything is give and take, even on the one that I came up with. But again, Brett Yormark, you can hire me for a nominal fee because I gave you more rivalries and less travel, man. I'm just saying.
You need a beach house, right?
I'm just saying. But I got a lot of Big 12 friends out there, even though I'm a Big 10 guy, and I love scheduling. I love coming up with this kind of stuff. And yeah, tell me what you think. Throw your, likes, dislikes. You're an idiot. You have the wrong rival. I don't care about this team. Why'd you leave them out? Throw it all down in comments below. Maybe I'll do another one of these for a different conference, or even as, schedules come out in the future. I love this kind of stuff. And if you guys love it too, I'm more than willing to make more videos, but let me know. I want to thank you again, Mr. Daniel Gygax, for stopping by the inaugural Pickles playbook. I'm happy to have you back any other time. We have Big 12 related content or otherwise.
No problem.
All right, man. We will see you next time on the Pickles playbook.